Let me share it on my Discord that we started. Okay. Uh, it's it's working. Let me also check if it's working. I have so many tabs opened up and I just chaos. Let me see. Yeah, since the new update of OBS, I had some like quality problems with the lag,
Mm.
and I had to change the coder of the stream of OBS, but it seems there is no lag. Yeah, seems there is no lag. Yeah, it's working well. Nem laggol és a hang is jó, rendben. Szia Songoku, szia Mini. Okay, they are saying that the quality is good. Yeah, if there will be a Hungarian question, I will translate it for you. So don't worry about it. Yeah, because it's like my community is like multinational language community, you know, multi languages. So there are all kinds of languages. Na, jó, itt van egy Songoku, Tiaru, szia neked is. Jó, minden? Everything is good, girls and guys, ladies and gentlemen, let us know so we can start. And like always, don't forget, guys and girls in the stream, at our end of the interview, you can ask questions. Feel free to do that in Hungarian as well. Hölgyek, urak, nyugodtan kérdezzetek a stream végén, és akkor lefordítom max, hogyha magyar. Minden jó? Jó. They are saying it's good. Okay. Let me know if you can start. I'm sitting in my original position, so
I'm
finally
ready
I
when you are.
want look at the right
Yeah.
side of the screen. Petya,
I will
köszönöm
also
szépen.
look here.
Okay. Okay, so welcome everyone at my very new episode of Dev Live Show. Today I'm joined with Francisco González. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but let me know if not. The head
You
of
are, yes.
Grundislav Games, who created so much awesome point and click games like Ben Jordan series. And I'm very thankful and very honored that you're here with us today at my show. And like I'm always saying, let's start with a little bit of introduction. So please introduce yourself for us.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for wanting. Yeah, so like you said, my name is Francisco Gonzalez. I'm a indie point and click adventure game developer.
Okay.
I started making games as a hobby in 2001, and yeah, I made the Ben Jordan Paranormal Investigator series from 2004 to 2012. It's a series of 8 games. They're still available to download and play on itch.io. And yeah, since 2014, I've been doing it as a career, and I've released 3 games, and I'm currently working on my 4th one. The games that I've released are A Golden Wake, which is a point and click Well, they're all point and click adventures.
Yeah.
But A Golden Wake is about a real estate agent in 1920s Miami. It's a historical fiction piece. Shardlight, which is a post-apocalyptic game about a woman searching for a cure to a disease in a post-apocalyptic dystopia. Lamplight City, which is a detective game in an alternate history steampunk universe. And the one I'm currently working on, which will hopefully be out soon, is Rosewater, which is a Western set in the same alternate history as Lamplight City.
So it seems
So
that
there
you were trying to touch all the themes of stories, right? With
Well,
these
I mean,
games, you could say,
yeah, not all of them, but
or most of them.
most of them.
Most
Yeah, I
of the
haven't done
interesting
like
ones.
I haven't done a space game or
Would you like
anything,
to? Would you like to though?
not really.
Okay.
No, that setting doesn't interest me too much. I mean, it's not that it doesn't interest me. It's that I don't feel like I have an interesting story to tell in
I
that
see.
setting
I see.
right now. So
I
we'll
see.
see. I don't know, but yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so for me, it's very interesting to hear origin stories of people who are into games and not just, you know, loving games and making games as well. So what's your origin story about the first contact of video games? So how it all started for you? Like you playing video games as
Well,
a kid.
yeah, it's been a very, very long time. I remember when I was a kid, my dad or my parents had an Atari, I want to say 2600, one of the home console Atari consoles. We didn't have it for very long because unfortunately our house got broken into and it got stolen. But I
Okay.
remember that I remember playing Pitfall, or at least watching my dad play Pitfall, and Omega Race, which was just like a black screen with a white rectangle in the middle, and there was just a bunch of little like circles and things going around. Um, so that I think is my earliest memory of like a home video game. But I remember playing, like, I used to go to the arcades in the mall and play stuff like Marble Madness and Rampage and all of those. And then I got a Sega Master System, um, and started playing a few games on that. And then I got a Nintendo Entertainment System, which I still have my original NES right over
Nice,
there.
nice.
Yeah, and then I kind of just, around that time, which was the early 90s, I also had a PC. So I started playing games on the PC, and I started gravitating more towards, I guess, adventure games. I mean, I also used to play a lot of shareware games. You know, you would get the discs for free, and the shareware. So like I would play stuff like Commander Keen and like Hugo's House of Horrors. And
Nice.
Hugo's House of Horrors was probably one of the earliest adventure games that I played. And I actually played King's Quest V on the NES. So that, along with Hugo and I think a little bit of Dragon Warrior, or Dragon Quest as it's called elsewhere, kind of gave me that spark of really liking games that were about narrative and about like quests and stuff.
I see.
And I always kind of had that desire of, oh wow, I would love to make a game like this someday. And it wasn't until 2001 when I just randomly was Googling and I found Adventure Game Studio, which is the engine that I've been using all this time.
Okay.
And I found it, I downloaded it, I started playing around with it, and I that's how I got my start.
Okay, I see. And was your daily job totally other than making games or something
Oh
connected to
yeah.
IT? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I worked at I worked at a store like Target, which is just like a department store here in the US. I worked at Starbucks making coffee, and then when I like decided I had to get a job that was a career job, I was an interpreter. I was an
Okay.
English Spanish legal interpreter for
Oh,
a few
nice.
years.
Nice.
And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to try making games for a living, and then I did, and I've been lucky enough that I've been able to do that for the
Nice.
past 10 years. So, yeah.
Was
This
your
is actually, it's funny because this is actually, even though it's not the most stable job I've had, it's been the longest job I've had. So, that's
Yeah,
good.
because you love
I,
it, right? You love what you do.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why. Yeah.
exactly.
And that was your dream.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's understandable. Yeah. And
yeah,
was your
absolutely.
family and close friends supportive about your choice, even if it was scary at first, I guess, that you're switching from stable jobs to, something that it's not sure
Yeah,
that will work
I
out?
mean, yeah, my family was always supportive of it. And I mean, it also just so happened that I moved to a different city when I decided I was going to do this as a living too. So it was kind of like a double sort of, what are you doing kind of thing. But I will I always remember the point where I felt like I had really made it, which was after A Golden Wake came out, and it had come out, and I was working on Shardlight, and it was out, the game was out, I was earning my living doing it, and my grandmother, who was always one of the most like level-headed, like practical, you have to do this, she went from asking me, she didn't ask like when are you going to get a real job, but she went from asking me like how is the job search going to how's your game going. So that
She
to
got
me
interested, right?
symbolized that, yeah, she finally accepted that this was what I was doing, and she
That
approved of
was
that.
probably a
So
very emotional moment for you and a very nice
it
moment, I
was, yeah,
guess.
no, it was a very nice feeling to
Yeah,
know that I had
yeah.
the full support.
Nice, nice. And what was the hardest part when you first started making games, if you can remember that?
The hardest part, when well, do you mean when I first started
Yeah.
commercially, or when I first started, like,
No, just
period?
trying out yourself in making
Fine.
games. Yeah.
Yeah, the hardest part was getting it to look good because I didn't have any art skills. I mean, I
Okay.
had like, I didn't have any formal art training and I
Okay.
didn't really know how to do pixel art or anything, so I kind of had to teach myself, and as a result my very early games are very, very ugly. And I
But
mean,
I
it took a
hope
very
you are
long
still
time.
proud of those games.
Well, I mean, as a whole, I'm proud of the fact that like they came out and I was able to
Nice.
finish them. I
Finish.
think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was the most important thing. But as far as how they look, I look back on them and I mean, it's nice to see that I've improved, but at the same time, sometimes I look at some backgrounds and I remember doing them and I think, "Oh, I was actually proud of how this looked at the time." Why? But then it also shows growth because if I felt good about it at the time, that was clearly the best I could do at the time. And now looking at it and thinking, "Oh wow, I could do better than this." That shows at least that I think that I've grown as an artist. So
True, true.
it's something.
Okay, nice. So you were talking about skills, mentioning skills. Here comes the question from that. So what do you think, what skills have you picked up from being a game dev to your personal everyday life? So how have you developed yourself as a person from being a game developer? What do you think about that?
That's a very good question. Um, I guess I guess one of the things that I don't know if it's that game development necessarily made me acquire this skill or if
Okay.
it's just it helped me improve it that but I always feel like I've been very disciplined as far as work ethic goes. I
Okay.
feel like when I start something, I try my best to always finish it. And I think game development just helps me do that because, like I said before, I think the most important skill I've learned is actually finishing something because there's so many projects that, because of either too much ambition or too large scope, which I guess is kind of the same thing, they end up never seeing the light of day because indie developers, if they're just starting out, they might underestimate how much work it is. So I feel like my method of starting very small. The first Ben Jordan game I made in 2 weeks. So just the fact that I was able to commit to a project and finish it, I think that has helped me in my personal life as well because I commit to things and I try and finish them if I'm helping someone out or something. I like to think that I don't that I'm reliable with regard to doing things. Um, and I guess just well, yeah, I guess that's about it. If I think of any more, I'll I'll
Okay,
come
thank
back
you.
to it.
And have you got back to some things that you haven't finished before, like being a game dev, as you told us that you had some things on at your life that you wasn't like finishing. Have you got back to those things as you
Oh,
mentioned it, like
I'm
hobbies, for
trying to think.
example, or projects that
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
like
yeah,
in the game industry territory?
yeah. Um, no, not really. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that because maybe I have too much. I'm a bit of a workaholic
Okay,
because sometimes I feel like I don't really have any hobbies anymore because I don't really count playing games as a hobby
it's more like a
because
passion, right, for you?
well, I yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like when I play I don't really play adventure games. Very rarely do I play adventure games because oh, what happened to my computer?
I still can hear you, by the way. Your camera just froze. Oh, now it's okay. Now
Oh,
it's good again.
my monitors just went black for some reason. That's strange. Maybe it's the gods punishing me for saying that I don't play adventure games.
You're rather making them,
Um,
so there is nothing to worry about, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, as long as you're still there, I'll try and talk as long as possible.
Okay.
So yeah, so I guess, I realized I don't really have really any hobbies like I used to before. I
Okay.
mean, I try and read, but I don't really read that much. But as far as other projects that I've left hanging that I've come back to, I can't really think of anything along those lines.
I see. But you rather write, so you write the stories of the game. So you rather
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
me who is as for example for me I rather do sport than watching sports. So it's totally understandable
right.
if you're a creator, you might not go into the same deep level of
No, I mean,
doing it.
I enjoy playing games, and I enjoy playing, games with good stories. But I tend to focus more on playing like action games, like Assassin's Creed or Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto, that kind of thing.
I see.
Um, so yeah.
How has your perspective and the style of looking on games have changed as soon
How
as you became a developer? Like
how
where
has
you
my
came?
wait? Hold on one second. Let me
Okay,
put on my headphones because I'm
okay.
having
I
trouble
I might
hearing
be
over the
quiet.
fan.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice,
yeah, yeah,
nice,
yeah.
nice. Okay,
I
okay.
can hear you better. Sorry. What was the question?
So
How's my perspective on what?
have your perspective changed over the time as soon as you started developing games? So where you became more judgy about games or less judgy?
Well, I'm normally a very judgy person, so that's a funny question.
Okay,
Um, no, I mean, I don't play when I do play adventure games, I try and enjoy them. I don't sit there and think, "Oh, how did they do this?" or "How could they have done this better?"
okay,
or anything like that. I try not to let that cloud my enjoyment of adventure games. I mean, if people come to me and they ask me for my opinion, I'll gladly give it to them, but I don't try and come out and say, "Oh, you should have done this." But I don't know. I guess I've gained more of an appreciation for how much work goes into game development, and
okay.
so I guess in a way, I'm a little bit more forgiving of things. If I see like a bug or something, it's like, oh, there's a bug, but it's like, well, it's a miracle that the game works at all in
True,
most
true, true,
cases.
true.
So
You understand the work
yeah,
behind the games and now can appreciate them more.
exactly,
Yeah, I'm always joking
exactly.
with it that every player should be a developer, and then they might be not be judgy that much of games, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%.
yeah, okay. So, and what was your favorite game to make so far, as from the collection
My
of your
favorite game to
games that you have
make
made?
so far.
Yeah, and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess the game that I have the most fond memories of working on
Okay,
is Ben Jordan Case 3
okay,
because I made it over a summer when I was in college and I was at university doing like a summer taking like two classes over the summer. So it was like I would go to class maybe twice a week. I had a lot of free time. I would come home, I'd work on the game, and I don't know, it was just a really fun time. It was really creative, it was kind of like where I felt like the series was really ramping up as far as quality of storytelling. Um, I remember being on the IRC and getting tracks from the musician and just putting them in the game and getting really excited about how it was sounding and things like that. And yeah, it was just that when I think back on that it's definitely, I think, the game that I feel the most good memories about working on. Not to say that I haven't had good memories about working on other
yeah,
games, but that
understandable.
one in particular sticks out to me.
Okay, thank you. And so,
Mhm.
speaking of Ben Jordan, have you always knew that you want 8 episodes to make for that series?
No,
Okay,
I didn't always know. When I started off, I kind of just thought I would make a series of games. I had no idea how many I would actually make. But then
okay,
by the time I got to the third one, that's when I kind of sat down and thought, okay, well, how many am I going to make? And I wrote a rough outline of the sort of arc of the whole series. And I think I had 9 games, and then I cut one because I didn't have a good plot for it. And
okay,
then so then, yeah, I settled on 8, and that kind of just came about from that.
okay. I see. Okay, so we were talking about like the stories that you want to give to the players at the beginning of our interview. So, do you feel like
Hmm.
as you been growing up and developing as a person, you always like shared your own experiences and thoughts through your games? So, is should we say that like for all creators, you like owned your stories from your life, and the messages that you are giving to the players has been influenced by your own story of life? Because it's the case still
That
in
is,
most of the developers, right? And most of the people
yeah,
who are creating art. So is that the case at your life and your games too?
that's an interesting question. I mean, I think that it's inevitable that a creator will always put some
True,
part of
true, true,
themselves or their lives in their
true.
work, for sure. I don't think I've ever done anything extremely autobiographical in
Okay,
any regards. I mean, I've certainly put in little, like, I couldn't give you a specific example right now, but I know
understandable.
that
Yeah.
I've put stuff, yeah, I've put in stuff in my games that have either been, it's not even like an inside joke kind of thing that I'll get because it's drawing specifically from my life, but I know I've definitely put in some stuff. Well, here's an example. In Ben, again, going back to Ben Jordan, in the second Ben Jordan game, there's a part where you go into a coffee shop, which is supposed to be Starbucks. It's modeled after Starbucks.
Okay.
And when I made the original Ben Jordan case 2, it was before I worked at Starbucks. And the whole thing was that you talked to the employee, and the employee was upset and angry because they didn't like working for a big corporation, and they hated it was like this whole thing against like big corporate coffee things. And it wasn't because I particularly felt strongly about that. I just, you know, kind of thought it was funny to have like a disgruntled employee be mad about that. So when I remade case 2, the coffee shop was still there, but at that point I had been working at Starbucks, and so I changed it so that the employee was disgruntled because he was annoyed by the customers, because I I myself was there were several customers that I was annoyed by. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use this as my little platform to talk about how some people are entitled when they come to Starbucks and they don't realize that they're being entitled. So that was a little something I did.
I see.
Um,
Do you think
but it's
that some
funny
of the
that you,
customers
yeah,
that were at your Starbucks that you worked for played your game and realized it?
absolutely not. And also, I didn't model the customers after any specific ones from my store. It was more kind of just the archetype
I
of,
see. I see.
well, this person
Behaviors.
is, yeah, this person doesn't know what they want to order, or and they take, or this person's talking on their cell phone while they're in line, and
I see. I
that
see.
sort of thing. It was yeah, just general bad habits more than like this is one specific
Yeah.
character. So.
Yeah. Okay.
But there is, not to get too far ahead of myself, but um, I have a project that's coming up after Rosewater
Okay.
that I is probably going to be slightly more veering towards autobiographical, though not completely
Okay.
autobiographical, but definitely inserting more elements of certain things. But that'll just be a little tease.
Okay. Thank you. First time information on my show. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Do you believe it's important that players have to get the message of the games? And do you think for you, like a creator, is it important that people should get the main message or the small messages of your games?
I mean, it helps, but I mean, I don't really think necessarily that like putting a message in a game is required. I
Okay.
mean, it's definitely a form of expression. Like any
True. True.
artistic or creative endeavor will probably have, whether it's intentional or not, a message or an idea or a theme that someone will get from it. Um, but I don't necessarily, sometimes I do, but I'm not trying to, I'm making games because I enjoy making games, and I like being accurate, I guess. I'm not necessarily using games to push any sort of like opinion or agenda or
Yeah.
anything. Like,
Understandable.
with Lamplight City, for example, it's a story about dealing with crime and bad things and bad people in a specific time period. And even though it's an alternate universe, I thought it would be cheating, or not cheating, but I thought it would be wrong to just kind of gloss over the fact that in the real 19th century, there was a lot of bad things happening and a lot of injustice and a lot of, stuff that's not very pretty that,
True.
some people don't like talking about today. And so I thought it would be a disservice to just pretend that that never happened and just use the alternate history thing as an excuse to not
True.
show it.
True.
And, I didn't want to like go in and hit people over the head with it, but, there are some players who have complained like, oh, this game is pushing an agenda and whatever. And like, I'm not trying to do that. Like, I'm just trying to show that, you're dealing with negative things, you're dealing with crime, you're dealing with injustice. You're going to see that. It's not just going to be like, oh, let's look the other way, So, but anyway.
True.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are so scared to look into the real world? Bringing that up. I know it's a hard question, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
why, like you said, they are
I
looking
wish
the
I
other
could.
way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky subject because you can never really understand another person the way that they think, really, without
You
being
have to sit
them.
down
Like,
and talk with them, right? That would be
yeah, you
the
can be as
best option.
empathetic and possible.
True.
You can be as empathetic as possible and try to understand their point of view. But ultimately, it without being them, it's hard to understand exactly how people think. And I have a hard time understanding why people would be afraid or uncomfortable to talk about, basic stuff like that. But anyway, I don't want to get on a political soapbox here.
Yeah. No, I was trying to say it without political things because I'm not into
Yeah.
politics. It's just weird for me that people are like, very, like you mentioned, can be very negative, they responding to like topics that are being mentioned in video games. Like,
I think, yeah, I
or
think
not just at
not to
video
go
games,
off on,
at other forms of media, of course, as well.
yeah. I think not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I think it's a lot to do with social media and the fact that people and creators and stuff are so accessible, so people feel more, I guess, empowered to express their opinions, whether they're positive or negative.
True.
Because I mean, ultimately, my thought is always, if you didn't like the game, that's fair. I'm not expecting everybody to like everything about every game that I do. If you feel the need to tell me about it, okay, I guess. But like, ultimately, if it's something that just like deeply offends you or you don't like it, like, no one's forcing you to play the game. You can just stop,
True.
But some people feel like they have to tell you, even if it's not
I'm
constructive.
always saying it at my dev live shows and other streams as well, that I feel like most of the players who are giving very negative opinions about video games, it's more of like they are putting their real life issues on the table when they play games. That's why I'm always saying that players should be willing to step back from games when they are having problems in their real life, because it's more of like those problems or problematic times are affecting their behavior as they play games, and
possible.
also opinions. So they are more willing to be aggressive about or with their opinions online. For example, if they are making a review for Steam or somewhere else or other platforms. And it's a bad thing because like you said, and I'm totally agreeing with you on that you cannot understand these people because you cannot see them online, and they might be way more polite people. It's just they are the way like this. So yeah.
And I think it works both ways too, because I mean, I've been very lucky in that I haven't had any like super negative comments or any trouble with anyone bothering me or harassing me or anything. But I think a lot of people also don't necessarily realize that these games are made by other people, because one phenomenon that one thing that I've noticed is, like, for example, if someone goes into the Steam forum or something and
it's like they are just seeing the game, right?
comment,
and not the people who are making it.
Right. If they go in and they post something about the game, they make a negative comment or something, and I respond, like 9 times out of 10, they'll say, "Oh, I didn't think a developer would actually respond. Oh, thank you." And then
because they realize
completely
that
change
you
their
care
tone.
about them
Right.
and care about your
Right.
craft, and then they are going
Exactly.
to be more polite with you. Yeah, and that's when I first
Mhm.
started my dev live show. That was my main goal, not just bring game culture more close to people and to players, but to also show that
Mhm.
for players to be able to see behind the curtain and show the exact people who are, or the team members who are making these games, because like you just said, I totally agree with you on that too, that people do not see it, and they think like it's it's a god's craft, or somebody snapped his
Right.
or her finger and the game is out. It's not like, it's not that.
Right.
That's not the
Yeah.
case, and it's so weird, like people. And I think that it's not just for games, it's for everything now. Like if you go to a shop and order coffee, they think like, okay, it's like it's from the tree or something, like an app, and they're like,
Yeah.
it's so weird to see that. Like we are living in such a fast-paced world right now that people are forgetting that real humans are the ones who are making all the surroundings of our life, which we live in a comfortable way, and it's so bad to see that, and they are still so judgy about that. And for me to see that, since I'm so passionate about video games since my very early ages when I started playing games, and I still do. It's sad to see that. It's sad to sorry hear and see that these players are like so negative about games, like you also said. Yeah. Can you see a change in the near future for this, that people will be more open-minded about it? I know it's also a hard
I don't
question.
know.
Prepare for those
Yeah, I
questions at
don't
my
know.
show. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I don't know. I mean, I hope so, but
Okay.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I feel like it just seems like every day people are getting more and more angry,
True.
and
True.
I don't
True.
know.
True.
I
Sadly.
mean, maybe the problem is that like in the greater games industry there have been all these layoffs and everything. So, I think that's not doing much to help the idea that maybe a lot of gamers have that video games are made by these gigantic, faceless, uncaring corporations. Um, but maybe as a result, if more indie games come out, people will see that small teams and people who are actually passionate are making games. I don't know. I couldn't begin to speculate. I just hope
Okay.
that something gets better.
Okay. So going from these topics and from personal questions to of your games connected questions, are your games themes and stories connected, like in a same universe, or are they in different universes? How do you feel
Well,
about that?
so Lamplight City and Rosewater take place in the same universe.
Okay.
The previous two games don't.
Okay.
And the Ben Jordan games are also their own thing. Yeah, I mean, A Golden Wake is set in the real world, in an actual time period, and I tried to be as historically accurate as possible.
Okay.
Shardlight is completely fictional, set in the future, and yeah, that's its own thing too. But yeah, so I created the alternate 19th century thing for Lamplight City because I basically wanted to make a 19th century detective story like Sherlock Holmes, but
Okay.
I didn't want to be forced to be historically accurate necessarily. I didn't want it to be set in like London or New Orleans or whatever. So I kind of just made it an alternate history so I would have more creative freedom to kind of just work within my own world. Um, and while I was making Lamplight City, I thought about this world and how developed I had made it, and I thought about exploring more of it. And I thought, well, what else is appropriate to the time period? Well, the Old West. So I thought, okay, let's try that. Let's see what an Old West adventure game that's not a comedy would be. And so then I came up with the idea for Rosewater and started developing that.
Okay. And so, as a writer of these awesome games, were there times when you like wanted to get back to like at some point of the stories you have already written and change it because you felt like it's not correct for you to express those moments, or to write
Oh, sure.
that
I
story?
mean, yeah, I mean, the whole thing, the whole development process is an iterative process. I
Okay.
mean, it's not like I write everything and then that's it. You know,
Okay.
I try and wait until my process is usually I'll write if I'm developing like the world or something, I'll write the Bible, so to speak, the world Bible first. Like I'll think about, you know, what is this environment? What kind of things am I drawing from, just to have a sort of base to work with.
I see.
And then I kind of write out a story outline, and then I start thinking about, you know, sections of the game, what kind of puzzles I could do, that sort of thing. But before I actually sit down and I sit down and I write the story, like I come up with the story beats, but I usually wait to write the dialogue until once I've started building the game so that I can kind of see if the pacing works.
Okay.
So it's not like I do everything all at once and then do the next thing.
I
I kind
see,
of do
I
it
see.
as I go, right? And then I don't really start doing the final art until I'm sure that that section works, so that I don't have to worry about wasting time cutting something if it doesn't. So the priority is always getting the game built so that it can be fully played. But yeah, I mean, if there's something that doesn't work or something that doesn't feel right, yeah, I mean, I'll cut it. There's a section in Rosewater that I cut where I wanted to have I guess it's not too much of a spoiler to say, but there's a scene that's like the the main character and her group of friends are under attack, and
Okay.
they're being ambushed and shot at by a group of people. So there's several puzzles that I have multiple solutions to, usually like a more puzzly version and maybe like a more violent solution. So the puzzle originally had two ways to solve it. You could either like cooperate with all of your companions and figure out a way to like all work together to get rid of the people attacking you, or you could ask to borrow one of your companions' guns, and then you would go into like a shooting mini game that was
I
challenging and you
see.
could like shoot all of the people, right? So I had that in, and I was about to start animating like all of the stuff for all of the enemies popping up and getting shot and stuff. And then I stepped back and I thought, well, narratively, this doesn't really make a lot of sense because one, if you do the shooting thing, it it completely eliminates the whole thing of like talking to your companions, and it ruins
Okay.
all the good character moments
Okay.
and working together with your companions, which is kind of the whole thing, the whole theme of the game. Second of all, there's never been any other point in the game that indicates that the main character knows how to use a gun, let alone is okay with killing
I
people.
see. Okay.
So that kind of comes out of
He
nowhere,
might
right?
come out of
And
lucky, right, using that gun.
right. And then third, I found it really challenging to program the sequence and balance it in such a way that it was fun and not frustrating.
I see.
So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to cut it. And there's, you know, for the sake of having a multiple solution, it's not enough to justify this other solution because it just kind of feels tacked on at this point.
I see.
So I decided to change that and get rid of all that and focus on the, you know, the actual working together to solve the problem thing. Um, and that's just one example. I mean, that's the most recent example I can think of where the
Okay.
game was already well into production. But like when I was writing the outline for Rosewater, I remember thinking, okay, well, maybe there should be a choice point at the end of the second act where you can determine whether the story is like this kind of story or this kind of story or this kind of story. And then I realized that that would be way too much work, and I decided to just say, okay, well, it's one story, but the choice point will be something completely. Yeah.
I see. Okay. So as you also mentioned, like having puzzles in your game, as all adventure games has or
hmm
have, sorry. So what was the goal with the difficulty setting of your puzzles throughout your journey as a game developer, and how did it change throughout the years as you developed your games?
Well, when I first started making games and when I first started making the Ben Jordan games, and when I would design the puzzles, it was kind of just like, well, I've been playing adventure games my entire life. Let me think about the puzzles in those, and I'll just come up with something similar.
Okay.
So I didn't give too much thought to like how to integrate puzzles with the story. It was just kind of like, well, here's a puzzle. Let's figure out a fun puzzle to do. So I think in a lot of the early Ben Jordan games, there are some puzzles that are kind of just weird, or they're a little moon logic-y, as they say.
I see.
But as I went on, I kind of focused more on the idea of making the puzzles plausible within the game. Of course, that has the side effect of making my games easy in the eyes of more hardcore adventure game players because they're logical. So, you know, my idea is if you pick up something like a crowbar or something, you should be able to use that crowbar to open a door or pry open a door, and not combine it with a piece of string and chewing gum to make a fishing
or a chicken,
rod,
yeah.
kind of thing.
Or a chicken, yeah.
Or a chicken or something absurd like that, yeah. And so yeah, I try and make my puzzles as grounded or at least to make sense within the world as possible.
Okay.
Which is very challenging, and puzzle difficulty is one of the most challenging things, because one puzzle that might seem difficult to you might seem easy to someone else, and vice versa. Something you think is easy might be impossible to. So it's really hard to gauge, and I don't know. I kind of always feel like when you play an adventure game, I don't know, there's definitely a lot of people who think that the appeal of adventure games is to play them for challenging puzzles, but I don't know. I just played Myst and Riven for the first time like a couple of weeks ago, and those are very much puzzle heavy games. Like, I don't know. I feel like successfully marrying a story or a game that has like satisfying puzzles and satisfying story is very, very difficult. And I'm not trying to necessarily do that. I'm just trying to do it as best as I can. Because it is very hard to. I don't think you're ever going to please everybody. So I try and just make a game that I would enjoy playing, basically.
Nice. Okay. So and
I mean, and when I say that, I mean, like, when I play adventure games, I like to have puzzles that are satisfying to solve and don't make me think like, oh, how was I ever supposed to figure that out? So yeah.
There were a lot of those puzzles in the classic point and click adventure games, right? Logical puzzles, yeah. Okay, so and that's as a player and also a developer, is it like more important for you to have a very good story or puzzles, or both, as we talked about these topics?
I mean, for me, I think it's more important to have story, because if you think about it, if you ask somebody like about their favorite classic adventure game, right? Like, more often than not, you ask them like, oh, what do you like most about The Secret of Monkey Island? They'll say, oh, I like about it's about Guybrush and wanting to be a pirate, and it's really funny and whatever. No one's going to say, oh, I really liked that puzzle on Monkey Island where you had to do this, right? Like, nobody ever talks.
Oh, the screen froze and I cannot hear you now.
Oh no.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you now. And I can see you again.
You can hear me?
Yeah, and I can see you again. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have a black screen.
No, it's
so
okay.
I don't
it's okay.
know what's going
Sorry
on.
for that. It's just frozen. I got scared for a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. But yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, like, no one, when you ask someone to recall their favorite adventure game fondly, they'll most likely tell you because they'll tell you something about the story or something about the characters or a particularly funny moment or an interesting moment. But very few people will be like, I really love that puzzle about this. So I don't think that this is not to say that adventure games should not have puzzles or anything like that, but I definitely feel like they are not as important as maybe some people think they are or should be. So
True. Okay, so
actually, interestingly enough, I was just talking to my partner about this because she is, as I said, I played Myst and Riven, and Myst is a puzzle game, and she was telling me about how Rob Miller, one of the co-designers, gave a talk, like a post-mortem at GDC about 10 years ago, where he was talking about Myst, and he realized like the night before the talk that he hadn't put in a slide about the puzzles, and he
Okay.
kind of just talked. He added it at the last minute and kind of talked a little bit about the puzzles. So it's funny that a game that most people consider a puzzle game, and the puzzles being the priority of it, like, was an afterthought to him in talking about it as a retrospective. So I think that says a lot.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because like I'm always saying, it's like the best stories are told by the people who had, or might had the hardest times in their life, or has some messages to give,
Mm.
even if it's not intentional. And
Mhm.
like you also said it, that we are, as creators, are trying to tell a message. Yeah. So as you mentioned that you loved and you still love games and adventure games especially, have you had those times when you wanted to like put Easter eggs from other games as well to your games?
No, I try not to do that.
Okay. And why?
I mean, if I put in Easter eggs, I usually do Easter eggs related to my own games,
Okay. Okay.
just to get other people to play them. Maybe sometimes I'll put in an Easter egg referencing like another indie adventure game, but as
Okay.
far as putting in Easter eggs related to like the classics, I really don't like doing that, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's my own personal thing, but I feel like for some reason the adventure game genre is just really stuck in nostalgia a lot of the times.
Okay.
And I mean, the classics are great. I have an entire big box collections of all the classic games. But I just feel like that constant going back to it and being like, oh hey, remember this game? Remember this game? Here's a little thing that's a reference, or it's something to remind you of the other games. It kind of feels like it's saying, well, look, if for me to get your approval as a player, I have to remind you of other games that you liked, instead of letting you form your own opinion of my game as a as a standalone thing, right?
True.
So I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's the main reason I don't like doing it. And also because like everybody does it. If I had a dollar for every time I saw an indie adventure game where it was like, 3 important looking whatevers, or whatever, or like a reference to Cedric the Owl or something like that. It's like, okay, yes, these games are like almost 40 years old. Like, let's move on, please.
Okay,
So
I understand
that's
that. I
that's my
understand that. I'm not saying it's bad or good, but I totally understand that. And yeah, I got your point.
yeah,
You want to like make something new, like out of the box
exactly.
thinking. Okay. But is
Yes.
that flag behind you an Easter egg to something? I wanted to ask this.
No,
No, it's just like
no,
love
it's not an
pirates
Easter egg.
or
It's
future
just
project.
No, I've had this forever. I used to have
Okay.
it in my room when I was a teenager, and I've just always kept it. And when I decorated my basement home office, I just decided to put it up there so I wouldn't have to look back and see the rest of the
But see,
basement. But then I got this
you
wood.
also live in the past, so it's not a bad thing. That's what I wanted to
Oh,
say with
well,
that.
sure.
See,
Of course. Of course.
nostalgia,
No,
nostalgia, man. No, I'm just
I'm just
joking,
as
but
guilty.
I feel like it's good to live in the past. I totally get your point, and I agree with you on that. But
Mm,
I also feel like it's not intentionally for people. It's just they wants to like reflect to other games and not like seeing the new games that they also could shine, but also like
mm.
they would like to get back to their childhood. I feel like that because I believe in that
Yeah,
that
no,
every person is like even that there are some live gurus who are saying that we should live in the future and the moment. Still, I feel
mm,
like almost everyone in our life or everyone, in my opinion, is down to like at the back of their minds at least they are living in their past because past is coming with us, and we gotta appreciate
mm.
that. In my opinion, at least, of course.
Yeah, and I get that sentiment, and that's totally fine if if my games make people recall their childhoods and
True.
they remember fondly that's great. But I think what bothers me a little bit is some people think that like indie adventure developers now are making adventure games purely because that's the only reason they're doing it,
True.
right? To
True.
make people
Understandable. Yeah.
nostalgic. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not the reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I like the medium. I
True.
like the
True.
genre. I feel like it's a good way to tell
To
stories.
tell stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I work in pixel art because that's what I'm capable of artistically. But it always amuses me, when people see my game and they say, "Oh, it looks like Broken Sword." I'm like, okay, I understand, but like, show me a screenshot from Broken Sword,
You
like
don't even
Broken
know the
Sword
game,
1 or
but it
Broken
looks like
Sword
that,
2.
yeah.
Right, because it's like my game it's graphically very different. It's a different resolution,
You can
know.
tell
But
them our
anyway,
story, our dev life show that you weren't as best as doing art at the first time when you started making games, right?
yeah,
It can't look
exactly.
like that because of that reason, yeah. I know it's a joke, but yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So it's like it's in a lot of ways I feel like there's people who don't necessarily take the genre seriously because they think it's just like a nostalgia play, but
True, true.
there's not much I can do about that.
True.
I just make my games. If people want to feel nostalgic, that's great, but it's not the reason I make them.
True, understandable. Yeah, I agree with you totally. Yeah. Okay, so going back to from this joke of mine of
Excuse me.
drawings and you're making art as for your games.
Mhm.
So was it scary like at the very first time when you wanted like making the art style for your game and developing your skills? Since
Was it scary when I first started
yeah,
developing them,
yeah.
or
Because you told us that you weren't feeling very good at it, like making
yeah.
the pixel art graphics for
Yeah,
your.
I mean, it was,
Okay.
but it wasn't that terrifying because it was just like, I'm making these games, I'm putting them out there for free. If people want to play them, that's fine. I wasn't losing anything. I think where I really started feeling it was when I started making a Golden Wake and I thought, okay, well, I need to step up my art game here because it's very different when you're asking people to pay for your games. They expect a certain level of quality. I can't get away with the same look as
Was it
if it was
stressful?
a
Was it
freeware game.
stressful?
I don't remember it being like overly stressful. I just
Okay.
remember thinking, well, I really need to step up my art game and just, trying to push myself. And I mean, a Golden Wake, I look back on it now and again, I don't think it's like, oh my God, this is horribly ugly. Like I did go back and retouch up some of the portraits a while ago because some of the portraits were pretty hideous. But overall, I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it's not my best work. But it's better than any of the Ben Jordan games. So there was at
We
least
all
that.
start from somewhere, so we gotta appreciate our
Yeah,
first steps, right?
exactly.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so as you were picking up skills on the journey as a game developer,
Mm. Mhm.
so have you learned it by yourself and by the help of the internet or by some mentors, some friends?
A little bit of both the internet
Okay.
and also books and also friends.
Okay.
I
What do you prefer
am.
more, like learning by yourself or having a mentor who is teaching you?
I think. I mean, I like having someone to like show my work and
Okay.
get opinions on
Okay.
it. I haven't really done that in a while. But like for a while there, I think the period of of my biggest artistic growth was maybe like 2015 through 2016, 17 when I was working on Lamplight City. Because I had worked with Ben Chandler on Shardlight and he had done the art for that. And Ben also, it's interesting because Ben has had a period of growth that has been very amazing to see, like from when he first started also in the AGS community, like doing freeware games to now. But he also for a long time was focused on just doing art study and just specifically working on his art.
Okay.
So I think he was immersed a lot more in that and was constantly doing that. Whereas I was like doing it when I could and also like programming and doing everything else while I was making my game. So I didn't have that same amount of time to dedicate. But he was always there and helping me out like when I would show him stuff and he would give me suggestions and stuff.
Nice.
So that helped a lot. And then he like recommended books and things for me to check out. Um, so yeah, that was very helpful to have.
Okay. I see. Okay, and as you mentioned also like you doing almost everything for yourself as for your games, what can when we it comes to music, what could you tell
Hmm.
us about that? So are you a
Well,
musician
music,
composing yourself or
no.
do you play any instrument or
No, no,
Okay.
no. Music is the one thing that I am happy to give to someone else.
Oh, okay.
I don't play any instruments. I mean, I sort of like when I was a kid, I had a little Casio keyboard and I would play around on that, but I never
Okay.
had any like piano lessons or anything like
Okay.
that. I've always, one thing is I've always had a good ear. So I've been able to like figure stuff out just by ear, but very, very, very simple things. Like I couldn't play you something with like complex chords or anything like that. And like I picked up the guitar for a little while and I know how to do like the basic chords, but I don't
Okay.
know how to do like actual like playing melody on the guitar. I can't do that. So I mean, I've always been very I've always liked music. I've always been interested in music. Like I've never done any sort of music theory or anything like that. But like, you know, I like basic music stuff. Like I know what a leitmotif is. I know like how to find little musical in jokes and things like that. So but I've never composed music for any of my own games.
I
Like I
see.
used to play around with MIDI stuff and I used to like do I guess covers of game music and stuff um when I was a teenager, but yeah, so like
Do you
so
miss
I've
it?
always
Do you
worked with
miss
a
it? Like
composer.
messing with music?
Do I miss it? I haven't thought about it in such a long time that I maybe I don't know, not really. Not really.
Time
I
to
guess cuz I
finish.
was just
Time to finish and get back to your project. That's what we were talking about, right?
yeah, yeah,
A
maybe I
skill
should
that you
pick
have
up my
picked
MIDI
up.
compositions again. But yeah, so I'm always happy to work with composers. And also it's nice to have someone else working with me on a project so
Okay.
that like I mentioned before, you know, the fondness when I was working on Ben Jordan of having the musician send me tracks and listening to them. That's always a great thing too because it's like the music really brings the game to life. The
Sure.
voice
Sure.
acting of course always brings the game to life. So it's like having someone else working independently and being able to send me things that I can still get excited about when I might be like, I've been working on this animation for 3 days or whatever, you know. That's always really cool to have. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you believe in perfect synergy as if it comes to team members that helped you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I feel like every composer I've worked with has been great to work with.
Okay.
My current composer, I feel like we really have a good synergy. Um, I think in all the time that we've worked together, he did Lamplight City and he's doing Rosewater now, obviously. I think in all the time we've worked together, he sent me maybe 2 tracks that I've said, no, this doesn't really work. But everything else he's sent me, like he understands the direction. Like it's really helpful because I mean I'm also not super picky. I like to think I'm not super picky. Um, which is not to say I'm complacent because you know I generally have a basic idea. I'm not like you have to do it this way. So I kind of give like a general idea, but because I want him to be creative and like play around and experiment and stuff. But he always understands the assignment and he always delivers something amazing. And like maybe, you know, I'll say, "Oh, well, maybe this thing you've done." Like he'll usually send me a sketch before he does a full piece.
I see.
So he sends me a sketch and he's like, you know, what do you think of the instrumentation? Like, what do you think of how this is going? I'm like, you know, sometimes I'll say like, oh yeah, this is great. You know, keep going. Sometimes I'll say, well, maybe try this and maybe let's hear what it sounds like with this instrument versus this one. But like as far as, you know, he sent me like a track for a thing and it's like, oh no, this totally doesn't work. Like it's happened maybe like twice. And then we included as bonus content on the soundtrack.
Okay. I see.
So yeah, but to answer your question, yes, I do believe sometimes there is definite synergy and like when you
Nice.
find a person like that, it's great.
Was
You
it
hold on
hard?
to them.
Was it hard to find the composers that worked with you?
Well, no, I mean, so the composer that I worked with on the first few Ben Jordan games was someone that was in the AGSIRC channel,
Okay.
and he also was really great. And we just kind of, he was just passionate about it, and he wanted to help me out.
I see.
And and I mean, it was a freeware thing, so it wasn't like, it was just kind of like, and I wasn't like hounding him. And then the composer I worked with for Golden Wake, he had actually worked on the last two Ben Jordan games because he had been a fan and like got in touch with me because I needed a composer. So we had worked together there, and I said, "Well, I'd love to work with you on this." And then with Shard Light, I was working with Wajidai on that one, so they kind of already had composers they had worked with, and they suggested that composer, and he was really easy to work with too, because he understood like what we were going for, and also Ben kind of had a little bit more input there too, so it wasn't so much me saying yeah whatever. And then I found this composer by chance at a local event here in New York, Mark Bennis, and he was just getting started, like he had never done a game before.
Oh, okay.
I was like, this is kind of what I'm doing, this is what I want to go for. I was like, I kind of like Bernard Herrmann, the composer of like a bunch of Hitchcock movies. And he's like, I love Bernard Herrmann. I was like, okay, great, let's go with that. And then we kind of just went from there, and
Nice.
we had this mutual love of certain film scores, and it just kind of went from there. And yeah, so the other day, well, not the other day, a while ago, I was like, listen, this is always the weird question to ask, but like, I'm happy continuing this working relationship as long as possible. Like, do you want to do like a Hitchcock Herman thing or like a Burton Elfman thing? And he was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, as long as I've got a game and you're willing to do it. Yeah, exactly. You're on retainer. So
nice. Okay.
Yeah. And then I always feel bad when I get random messages on Twitter from people who are like, hi, I'm a composer, I'd love to work with you. I'm like,
you have to say no.
Thank you, but I've got somebody already. But
it's
but
not
then I try and be like,
anymore.
Well,
yeah.
I always say like, I'll put you in touch if I hear about anybody that needs a composer. I'll pass your along.
So the helping hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pay it forward.
Yeah. Okay, so and as going back for the stories, as you as a writer of stories of these games, have you ever thought that you should write any books? Also, not just doing games, but you should.
So when I was working on Ben Jordan, when I was doing Ben Jordan 8, I decided to try and write a novelization. I think it was that National Novel Writing Month. And so I tried to write it like a companion novelization.
Okay.
And I realized very quickly that
your screen froze again. Sorry for mentioning that. And your voice froze again.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I cannot see you. Yeah, and now I can see you.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So I realized that writing a book is very
you froze again. Sorry for that.
True. It's probably just the internet.
It's okay.
Giving me trouble lately.
It happens to every one of us. So
yeah. So yeah. So writing a game is very different from writing a book, and I have no desire to write a book because it's just too much.
Okay. And you mentioned the story of yours. I couldn't recall that because you started to lag a bit. So there was a novel that you started to write as from the...
Oh, yeah. So when I was working on Ben Jordan 8, I decided to try and write it as a novel when I was for just to see if I could. And I realized that's what made me realize, because I was like, I was writing all these descriptions and things, and it was like I remember it just being so wordy and so meandering, and it was just like, no, it needs to be tighter, but I can't fix this. Like I'm giving up. So I gave up.
So you have to get back to
music.
So that's what I wanted to say. You have to get back to music first and to writing your book, right? Therapy session with me, right? I'm always joking about this, that these interviews of mine are like therapy sessions for me and for my guests as well. But it works, see? It works. I should pick up a skill as for therapy, man. Yeah. Okay. And so going to the future. So you mentioned Rosewater and also another game that you're going to make. So what are your feelings about these two games? How do you feel about these two games? What are your goals with these
Well,
games? What are your plan with these games? Or
well,
when?
Rosewater right now, I'm feeling. Uh, it's hard to say. I've been working on Rosewater for about 5.5 years now, which
Okay.
is twice as long as I thought it was going to take me. So I feel like it's been a very long time. And part of me is excited to get it finished. And another part of me is more and more terrified with each passing month because once it's actually finished and out there, that's when people start telling me what they think about it. And
So you
that's
get to
always
you can get too
very
emotional
stressful.
about opinions, if I'm
Yes.
correct, right?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. But having said that, I mean, I kind of feel this way about every game that I do, but I definitely feel that it's better than all of my previous games just because of the increase in quality in all aspects because I've grown as a person and I've also had other people helping me on this project that I think have increased its quality. So I'm excited to get it finished. I would love to have at least 2 months where I don't have to worry about working on it, and I can take a nice vacation and not think about game dev. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to get started on my next project, but I also don't want to get started too quickly because I do need a break. And also, my next project is not going to take me 6 years. I actually have two projects in mind.
Oh, okay.
But I was going to which one I did next. For a while I was saying depended on how Rosewater did,
Okay.
but I realized that if Rosewater does well, then okay, that's great. I don't have to make so the thing is that one project is not a long one. The other one is like another multi-year one because it's big and complex. So I thought, okay, well if Rosewater does well, I can make the shorter one next and I can wait to make the bigger one. And if Rosewater doesn't do well, then I can make the bigger one. I'll make the bigger one next so that, I can have like it'll maybe do better or something. But then I realized if I commit myself to another multi-year project and Rosewater doesn't do well, then there's no guarantee that I'm going to be able to finish it because I need to be doing well to continue to sustain myself. So I was like, well, I'll just make the shorter one next, regardless of whether Rosewater does well or not.
I see.
Because if it does well, okay, great, then I'll have money coming in and not have to worry. And if it doesn't do well, then okay, I'll have some money coming in, but I'll also have a shorter development cycle. And also, I didn't want my next project to be another multi-year development cycle, so I figured I would just take it easy on myself and do
Okay.
something shorter and linear.
I see. I see. Okay.
So yeah.
Would you regret?
But having said that,
Oh,
I,
sorry,
I am
sorry.
excited about both. I am excited about working on both projects, and I hope that I get to do them.
And we are excited to see what other games you have in plans and
Well,
if you release them.
thanks.
Nice. Okay, so would you regret if you haven't chased your dreams as being a game developer?
Would I regret if I hadn't chased my dreams? Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I on one hand, I'm very happy about the fact that I'm eternally grateful for the fact that I was able to chase my dreams and make
Okay.
it work. On the other hand, sometimes I think about the future and I think about, well, am I still going to be making games in my basement when I'm 50? Like, how long can I do this for? And when I stop, like, how am I going to earn a living? Because I don't really have that many useful skills to earn a living. So if this all goes away, I'm going to have to scramble very quickly to find something else to do. So that's always kind of a little nagging thing in the back of my mind. But for
I see.
now, I'm just happy being able to do this and being able to make it work. And yeah, I am glad that I chased my dreams because I did it at a time where I was making a lot of changes in my life. And if I hadn't done it then, I probably never would have because I would have found something else that would have taken up my time and I probably would have felt like I couldn't leave
I
that
see.
right
I see.
away. So, yeah.
And I'm happy for you that you changed your dreams and you're bringing
Well,
so
thank
many
you.
awesome games to the table. And I hope it will work out for you, even like
Thank
being
you. I hope so.
100 years making games, and we will be sitting
Well,
here with you and talking about your new games. I hope that. I hope that.
I
And I
don't.
can see that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So you
we'll
also
see.
mentioned you owned and you collected a lot of old games with boxed versions. Are you loving those physical editions of games, and are you planning to release your games with physical versions as well for people like me and like you who love these, nostalgic feels for getting
Yeah.
physical versions in the hands of ours?
Well, yeah. I mean, all my games that I have are like the old big box games of the classic adventure games from Sierra and LucasArts and a few others.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, I would love to be able to do physical releases of my own games. In fact, I actually have printed out copies of like Lamplight City and Rosewater boxes for myself and for a few people. Problem is that there's there's some people who say, "Oh, I would love to have a big box copy like yourself," but there aren't enough people to justify the cost because the shipping costs alone are just ridiculous. So, I mean, if it was something where it was like, oh, we'll do a Kickstarter, and the number of Kickstarter backers is the number of people that will receive a box, and it's sort of like if you get your orders first and then you fulfill them, okay, sure. But if it's like, oh, I'm going to order, 5,000 boxes and then you get 2,500 people who buy them, you're stuck with 2,500 boxes
True,
that you
true,
can't
true.
do
I
anything
understand.
with.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was like a custom to order thing, maybe, but all those logistics are just I wouldn't want to do them. Like
You're
maybe
not into that.
my
I got you. I
publisher.
got you. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a whole separate
That's not
thing.
a
But I mean,
creative
I would
process, we
love.
should say.
Yeah. I mean, the thing too is that like, no one buys games, like most computers don't have an optical drive
True,
anymore,
true,
so
true,
it's
true.
like the game comes like what on a USB stick or something.
Maybe.
It's not quite the same. Yeah. But I mean, I would love to have like a custom Rosewater box with like feelies
Yeah,
and
that would
a
be super
manual.
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
With the same
But
size
unfortunately
like classic
nowadays,
games boxes, to fit on the shelf.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
I can see
So
that, and I hope that will eventually come to a point in the
I mean,
future.
everything works in cycles. Maybe having big boxes on store shelves will be in again in a few years. Who
True,
knows?
true. I mean, there are some companies like I'm always mentioning in my dev live shows, like limited run
Hmm.
games and strictly limited, and all
Yeah.
these companies that are making
Hmm.
physical version games. So, have you ever planning to release your adventure games to other platforms as well, like Switch, which is very popular around adventure games
Yeah.
developers, or
Well,
PlayStation, Xbox?
Lamplight City is actually on Switch,
Okay,
and I'm pretty sure Rosewater will eventually come to Switch too.
okay,
With regards to consoles, I mean, I don't know anything about porting. It's always been external people who have ported the games, and that's also kind of a publisher decision. Um, I mean, Lamplight City is actually the game that has been ported to the most things because it's on iOS and Switch, as well as PC, obviously, and Mac and Linux. But yeah, I mean, also it's another one of those things where it's like, is it worth the cost of doing? Because I mean, thankfully, the iOS version of Lamplight City, it wasn't as huge a project to port,
I see.
so the porting cost wasn't as big, and it managed. I was expecting that it wasn't going to recoup ever, but it actually recouped pretty fast, and it doesn't earn a lot of money, but it earns something at least still, which was completely against what I had been told. I had been told that the mobile market for adventure games was completely dead because no one wants to pay for a game anymore, but that's not true because Lamplight City obviously has been doing okay. Um, but yeah, like it depends on how many people are actually going to buy it on other platforms versus how much it costs to port to those other platforms. So
Okay.
Steam, unfortunately, is kind of the monopoly
True,
on
true,
game
true,
distribution right now.
true. Okay, so we were talking also about marketing. Are you loving to market your game yourself, or is it a
No,
hard
that's why I have a
skill to?
publisher.
Okay.
I mean, marketing itself is also a full-time job, and I do what I
Sure.
can on social media, but yeah, it's I much prefer to work on the game and show off like little behind the scenes things rather than actually have to focus on, planning sales and reaching out to press and things like that.
True.
That's definitely why I appreciate having a publisher.
Was it like very scary first to connect to publishers and to find the perfect one?
At first, no, because the first publisher I had, as I mentioned, was Wadjet Games, and I knew I knew Dave, who is Wadjet Games, from way back in the AGS days, and so it was kind of a situation where it was like he started publishing games, and he knew me, and he knew my work, and he said,
Okay.
I would love to publish a game of yours. So it was kind of like I had this open invitation to publish with
Okay.
him. So I just had to come up with a game to publish, and I wanted to finish the Ben Jordan series first, so I did that. And then A Golden Wake was the game that he first published, and then Shardlight. And then when I was working on Lamplight City, long story short, we had creative differences in that the game that I was making was not what he thought it was. I guess he thought, well, we had some differences in opinion about like what steampunk was, I guess, is what it kind of boiled down to. But basically, what he thought the game was going to be versus the game it actually was different enough that he said, the changes I would want you to make to publish this would make this a completely different game. So, I'm okay walking away if you are. I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So it was then that I actually had to do like the work and cold email and find a new publisher. So at that point, that was, I guess, when it was very stressful and scary, because at that point I was like, oh, gee, I don't really know any other publishers that focus exclusively on adventure games. So I need to find another publisher that knows what an adventure game is and how to market it, and that will give me a decent deal. So that was a very long several months of lots of emails, lots of near misses, lots of rejections, until thankfully I was put in touch with Application Systems Heidelberg via the marketing and PR person, who also happened to be the same marketing and PR person for Wadjet and a lot of other indie adventure developers. And she had worked with them, and she made the introduction, and yeah, it was also a good fit. So that was very lucky as well. But yes, to answer your question, it was very scary and it was very stressful, because here I was with this mostly finished game, and all of a sudden, no guarantee that I would have a publisher. And
yeah,
that was
understandable.
a stressful time, but thankfully it didn't last very long.
Yeah. Okay. So all throughout your journey as being a game developer and also living your personal life, what memories can you bring up as an example that have kept you being motivated throughout your journey making games?
Sorry, you kind of went a little quiet there.
Oh,
What was
sorry.
that
So
question?
yeah, so throughout the journey of being a game developer, making games of yours,
Mm-hmm.
what have kept you being motivated? And what
Oh,
examples could you bring up?
I think one of the things that helps me be motivated is, and I'm sorry if this sounds arrogant or pretentious, but I think the fact that I can do several different things, like that I have the ability to do several different things on a game, helps a lot.
Okay.
Because if I'm doing background art for an extended period of time and I get tired of doing it, or I get demotivated, I can switch to doing like character animation
I see.
or writing or design or whatever. And that helps me sort of get a fresh perspective on the game and get excited about working on something. And then if I'm doing, like, say, if I'm doing a background for something I've already designed, and then I say, okay, well, I finished this bit, now I'm going to design the next bit. I get excited about, okay, well, if I finish this background, then I can work on designing the next bit. And same when I'm designing, I'm like, okay, well, now that I've designed it, now I can start doing the art, and I can go back and forth between these different things. And that keeps me motivated. And also when I get, like I said before, a piece of music or something, or when we record the voice acting or whatever, and I start putting things in and the game starts getting more finished. That's really what keeps me going.
Okay, I see. Okay. We touched a lot of topics actually. Is there any topic that you think we haven't touched and you would like to talk about before we go into the chats?
No, not really.
Okay. I hope that you didn't mind any topics that are brought up for personal
Oh,
questions.
no, not
Thank
at
you.
all.
Thank you for
been,
that.
It's
Okay,
been very
so
interesting.
thank you for that. Okay, so if there is anyone who would like to ask any questions, let us know. Let us know. Please let us know. Let us know.
I'm gonna take another sip of water here. Also, I should probably check the chat on my phone.
Yeah, I'm reading back if there was any question. Oh, by the way, and Sims, thank you for the sub and the 5 gifted. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Sorry, I wasn't thanking it during the stream. Wasn't paying attention to chat. Thank you for that. There is a comment by Ed Manditor, if I'm pronouncing the name right. At the end of the day, game development is also just like any other job.
Yes, that is true. It is. It can be just as. It's not all fun and games, as I like to say. I think people have this idea that being a game developer
is just fun, right?
It's just fun and like playing games all day.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
No, it's a lot of work.
True,
it's a lot of work.
True, hard work. Yeah. Mini is asking what the pirate flag means. What I asked before too. Everybody is obsessed with the pirate flag.
I guess so. It doesn't mean anything. It's just it's I don't remember who gave it to me. Somebody gave it to me when I was a teenager, and I used to have it hanging on my ceiling in my bedroom.
But it's nice to see that it's important for you, and it's a piece of your from your past.
Yeah. And then when I moved to New York, I brought it with me, and I was using it as a curtain because I had a window that led out to a fire escape in my old apartment that didn't have a shade. So I hung it as my curtain. And then when I moved here, I just decided I'll put it up here in my basement. But yeah. I mean, it's an actual flag. Like, I could put it, if I had a boat, I could put it on my
maybe
boat.
That will happen in the future. You're becoming the pirates, right?
Yeah, maybe if the game design thing stops, I'll just go and sail the 7 seas.
Influenced by Monkey Island games, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is there any more questions? Let us know. Hölgyek, urak, hogy bármi kérdés van, kérdezzetek nyugodtan. Let us know. Please let us know if there is any more question. And Manditor, also if you have any questions or any of the viewers who are speaking English, let us know. I can also think of a question as or 2 questions as closing questions if there isn't any more questions. So as throughout your journey, how the length of your games changed? And what was the goal with the length of your games?
The length.
Yeah.
Well, with every game, I've always tried to improve some aspect of either my own skills or some aspect of the previous game. I don't really go into a game thinking, okay, well, it has to be X number of hours long or anything like that. It just kind of naturally happens. And sometimes I'm right about how long it's going to be. Sometimes I'm very wrong about how long it's going to be. Like with Rosewater, I thought it would take me the same amount of time as Lamplight City would to develop. And it ended up being a lot longer and a lot more content because of the multiple solutions. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, having worked on this game for such a long time, the next project I want to do, I don't want to work on it for so long, which is why I want to do a game that will only take 2 years maybe max to finish. And it'll be a shorter game, probably, but I don't care. It's quality over quantity a lot of times, and
Nice,
I don't like
nice.
padding out my games just for the sake of it. I think nowadays, especially, and I realize this too as a player, the older one gets, the less time one has to play games. So the
True,
shorter a
true,
game is, the more likely you are to actually be able to finish it.
true.
So I appreciate shorter games.
But people
I'm not
should
gonna. I'm
change
not.
their perspective on that, and people should be, more into
Yeah.
games again, even being an adult, as we were kids,
Yeah.
playing all those long
I
ass
mean,
games.
I'm not setting out to make like a 40-hour epic ever. For me, I mean, I'm estimating like Lamplight City seems to maybe take most people 8 to 10 hours to play
Okay.
through. Rosewater will probably be more like 10 to 12 hours, and that's perfectly fine. It doesn't
True,
need to
true.
be any longer than that, in my opinion.
True.
So
True. Okay. You also mentioned like your father used to play games with you. Have he tried out your games? Have you tried out your games?
No, neither of my parents. Actually, no, that's not true. My mother has played my games, but with me guiding her.
Okay.
And I think I've shown. I don't think they've ever actually played. It's either. Well,
Okay.
my mom has, yeah. But like I've definitely shown the games to like my family members and
Okay.
stuff.
Did they like
But
it?
they have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had friends. I've occasionally I've had friends reach out to me and say that they played the game, and that's been unexpected. Actually, funnily enough, there's someone I know through the local New York scene who is a musician.
Okay.
He plays wind instruments, including the shakuhachi, which is like this cool Japanese flute.
Okay.
And he messaged me a couple of years ago on Facebook and said, "Oh, hey, I played Lamplight City. I really enjoyed it. It was really cool." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. That's really cool that you played it." And we hired him to play the shakuhachi on the soundtrack to Rosewater.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay.
it came full circle. Yeah, it was
Connections.
really cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
Nice.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I had a question in my mind, but I can't recall it. It's so annoying when that happens.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. Okay, but I think that we touched a lot of topics. So, questioning again, the viewers of the stream of this interview, let us know if there is any more question that you would like to ask. Hölgyek, urak, hogyha bármi kérdés van, nyugodtan kérdezzetek, és akkor megkérdezem angolul. Let us know, please. Let us know. Let me also read back the chat if there was any question that I might have missed. But I cannot see any. Okay, I think that there are not any more questions. It's late at my time, around this time, so people
Yes.
are probably more lurkers. But like I said,
Right.
people also can ask on the Discord as well if they will have any more questions. So yeah, what is the plan for the release of Rosewater? Do you know exactly when are you planning to release it, or it's like still ongoing project? So
yeah, I mean, I'm always hesitant to say a release date, even a release year,
okay.
because when I started and I thought it wasn't going to take very long, I said, "Oh, I started in 2019," and I said, "Oh, it's coming 2021," and then I said, "Oh, it's coming 2022," and then I said, "Oh, it's coming 2023," and the last trailer says 2024, and I'm trying really hard to get it out in 2024, but the problem is that once you hit a certain, like, we're in July right now, and the month, the game is yeah, like you only have until, like, I want to say mid to late October.
Okay.
Because November and December is when all the AAA games start releasing, and when all the big end of the year sales happen, so it's really easy to get buried in all of that.
True.
So it's like I'm kind of running out the clock here because I want to release in 2024, but if I finish in like November, I have to wait until at least February of 2025 if I want to have any chance of of getting any attention. So yeah, it's still to be determined. I'm still saying later this year. The amount of work I have left to do is not.
The voice of yours froze again. Sorry for mentioning that. And the screen again. Yeah.
Well, the amount of work that I have left to do on the game is not an amount that makes it unrealistic to say that the game will be finished this year.
I see.
The question is, will it be finished this year in time to release before the big sales where I'll have to sit on it for a couple of months? So that's kind of what I'm playing with right now. My feeling is I would really, really, really hate to have to say, well, I said it's coming out in 2024, but it's actually coming out. But I figured that the trade-off will be if I do have to do that, I can at least say, well, it's not coming out 2024, but it is coming out on this specific day. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for your time, and thanks everyone who were watching us, even if live or even if watching the VOD back or the edited stream that will be later on released on my YouTube channel. I'm very honored that you joined us for today's episode.
Well,
of my
I'm
Dev Live
very
show.
honored that you asked me.
Thank you, and thanks everyone who were watching us. Thank you for that. Bye bye everyone.
Yes. Oh, and if before we go, I have to do the marketing.
True. Don't forget that. I already shared my on my part, so do that. True.
All right. Well, if you wanted to check out Rosewater, you can find it on Steam. You can wishlist it on Steam. You can wishlist it on GOG.com. You can check me out on Twitter or X or whatever it is now. I'm at Grundislav Games. I also have a weekly stream called Wild West Wednesday where I develop the game. I'm twitch.tv/Grundislav. I'm also, you can also find Lamplight City and A Golden Wake and Shardlight on Steam and GOG. Lamplight City is also on iOS and Switch, like I said. So yes, if you want to check those out, and as I said, the Ben Jordan games are all on itch. They're pay what you want, or you can just download them for free. Nice. So yes,
you pick up the skills from the publisher, right? To end the joke, to end our stream with a joke. They teach you for that. You should be the publisher of your own games, right?
Maybe
next someday. Time, maybe at a future project.
Maybe.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us, and don't forget to buy this talented person's game and to wishlist his new games as well.